Sophia had always believed that her life was nearly perfect. She was married to Ethan, a man who adored her, and together they built a loving and comfortable home. Their marriage was the kind that people often admired, filled with laughter, understanding, and a deep sense of trust. No matter what challenges life threw their way, they faced them together. It was the kind of love story that made Sophia feel like the luckiest woman in the world. Beyond her marriage, Sophia also had Lily, her best friend since their college days. Their bond was unbreakable, forged through years of late-night study sessions, whispered secrets, and unconditional support. If there was anyone Sophia trusted as much as Ethan, it was Lily. She was more than just a friend, she was family. Whenever Sophia needed advice, a helping hand, or just someone to talk to, Lily was always there. And when life got hectic, especially after Sophia and Ethan had their first child, she didn't hesitate to rely on Lily for help. Lily had become an integral part of their lives. She would babysit when Sophia needed a break, help organize family gatherings, and even offer advice on household matters. It never occurred to Sophia to question her presence in their home. Why would she? Lily had been there for her long before she met Ethan. If anything, she felt lucky to have a best friend who supported her marriage and genuinely cared about her family. However, not everyone shared Sophia's unwavering trust. Margaret, Ethan's mother, had always been polite to Lily but never truly warm. There was an unspoken tension between them, one that Sophia never understood. Whenever Lily was around, Margaret would grow quiet, her sharp eyes watching the younger woman with an unreadable expression. She never outright said anything against Lily, but there were subtle remarks, small hesitations in her voice whenever Sophia spoke about her best friend. "Are you sure you want to rely on her so much?" Margaret had once asked during a family dinner. Sophia had laughed it off, brushing aside her mother-in-law's concerns. "Of course, Lily is like a sister to me. She's always been there for me." Margaret had only pressed her lips together, saying nothing more. To Sophia, it seemed like a case of personal preference. Perhaps Margaret was just a little old-fashioned, or maybe she didn't like outsiders getting too involved in family matters. Whatever the reason, she didn't dwell on it. After all, Margaret had never provided any real reason to distrust Lily. As far as Sophia was concerned, life was good. She had a loving husband, a wonderful best friend, and a home filled with happiness. There was no reason to suspect that the trust she cherished so deeply would soon be shattered. At first, the changes were subtle, so small that Sophia barely noticed. Ethan had always been a devoted husband, the kind of man who would call just to check in, who never missed dinner unless work absolutely demanded it. But lately things had started to shift. He was coming home later and later, brushing it off with vague excuses about meetings and last-minute deadlines. His phone, once casually left on the kitchen counter or nightstand, was now always in his pocket. When he thought Sophia wasn't looking, she'd catch him texting, his fingers moving quickly before he turned the screen away. She told herself not to overthink it. After all, people got busy. Work could be demanding. He still kissed her goodnight, still told her he loved her. And yet, something gnawed at her, a quiet unease that she couldn't shake. Then there was Lily. For years, Lily had been a constant in Sophia's life, always just a phone call away. But now she was pulling back. Their usual weekend brunches turned into last-minute cancellations. When they did meet, Lily seemed distracted. Her usual warmth had been replaced by something distant, something guarded. She avoided eye contact, fidgeted when Sophia mentioned Ethan, and quickly changed the subject. Sophia noticed. Of course she noticed. "Are you okay?" she finally asked one evening, her voice laced with concern. "You've been acting different lately." Lily forced a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Just work stress," she said too quickly. "You know how it is." But Sophia wasn't convinced. Margaret, however, didn't even try to hide her suspicions. Sophia's mother-in-law had always been perceptive, her sharp eyes missing nothing. And now they were watching, scrutinizing. "Something is going on," Margaret said one afternoon, her voice firm. "I can feel it." Sophia sighed, forcing a laugh, though even to her own ears it sounded hollow. "Mom, you've never liked Lily. You're reading too much into things." Margaret's lips pressed into a thin line. "Maybe. Or maybe you're refusing to see what's right in front of you." Sophia shook her head, unwilling to let doubt take root. Ethan was her husband. Lily was her best friend. She trusted them, didn't she? And yet, as she lay in bed that night, listening to Ethan's steady breathing beside her, she found herself staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with questions she wasn't ready to ask. Something was wrong. She just didn't know what it was yet. It was supposed to be an ordinary afternoon. Sophia had been out running errands, lost in the usual rhythm of her day, grocery shopping, picking up dry cleaning, stopping for coffee. But fate had other plans. She wasn't even supposed to be in that part of town, yet something, perhaps instinct, perhaps cruel coincidence, led her there. As she passed the large glass windows of an upscale restaurant, a familiar figure caught her eye. He was seated at a private corner table, dressed sharply in the navy suit she had bought him last Christmas. A deep laugh rumbled from his chest, the same warm laugh that once made her heart flutter. But the woman across from him turned her stomach to stone. Sophia stopped in her tracks, her breath catching in her throat. She blinked, hoping, praying that her mind was playing tricks on her. But no. There they were, sitting too close, whispering, smiling in a way that sent a sickening wave of realization crashing over her. The restaurant was elegant, the kind of place Ethan used to take her for anniversaries. A place meant for romance, for intimacy. And that was exactly what she saw, the familiarity between them, the way Lily's hand lingered on his, the way Ethan gazed at her as if she were the center of his world. Sophia's heart pounded, her vision blurring at the edges. She wanted to burst in, to scream, to demand answers. But her feet felt like they were cemented to the ground. Instead, she turned and walked away, her mind spinning, her chest tightening with every step. That night she barely spoke. She watched Ethan from across the dinner table, studying his face, the lines of his mouth, the flicker of his eyes. How had she not seen it before? The late nights, the secrecy, the way Lily had slowly pulled away. The pieces had been there all along, and she had been too blind, too trusting, to put them together. Margaret, however, had never been blind. The older woman had sensed it, had warned her in subtle ways. But now she had proof. Margaret had grown suspicious months ago. While Sophia had been drowning in denial, her mother-in-law had been watching, waiting. And now she knew the truth. With quiet determination she had done her own digging, checking Ethan's credit card statements, noting the frequency of his unexplained absences, even making discreet inquiries through her own network of friends. What she found shattered everything. Ethan and Lily had been seeing each other for over a year. Secret weekend getaways, hotel reservations, expensive gifts. All hidden under the guise of work and friendship. Margaret had confronted Richard, her husband, with the damning evidence. "You knew, didn't you?" she demanded, her voice shaking with rage. Richard hesitated. Then with a heavy sigh he nodded. "I suspected," he admitted, his voice low. "I overheard something months ago. But I didn't want to believe it. And when I did, I couldn't bring myself to say anything. I didn't want to tear this family apart." Margaret's hands curled into fists. "So you let it continue? You let them make a fool out of Sophia?" Richard looked away, shame evident in his expression. "What was I supposed to do? If I told her, it would destroy everything." Margaret's voice was cold. "It's already destroyed." And she was right. Sophia's world, her trust, her love, her belief in the people she held dearest, had already been shattered. Now all that remained was the confrontation. The decision wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Sophia had spent nights lying awake, replaying every moment, every sign she had missed. The betrayal had cut deep, shattering the illusion of the life she once believed was perfect. But she refused to let it break her. She would not let Ethan and Lily reduce her to a woman consumed by pain. So she made her choice. "I want a divorce," she told Ethan, her voice steady, unwavering. He looked at her, searching for hesitation, for weakness. But there was none. The woman standing before him wasn't the same Sophia, who had once trusted him blindly. She was done waiting for explanations, done crying over a man who had already made his choice. Ethan tried to justify, to plead. "Sophia, But she held up a hand. "Don't. I don't want to hear it." There was nothing left to say. With Margaret's support, Sophia fought for what mattered most: her future, her dignity, and most importantly, her child. Margaret, who had once been skeptical of Sophia, now became her fiercest ally. She used every resource, every connection to ensure that Sophia had full custody. Ethan, guilt-ridden and exposed, didn't stand a chance. As for Lily and Ethan, their so-called love did not last. The foundation of their affair had been built on deception, and soon enough, cracks began to form. Without the thrill of secrecy, doubt crept in. Ethan, once so confident in his choices, found himself questioning Lily's loyalty. And Lily, now no longer the other woman, realized that Ethan was capable of betraying the one person who had loved him unconditionally. They had destroyed Sophia's world, but they had also doomed themselves. Meanwhile, Sophia rebuilt her life. It wasn't easy, but every step forward made her stronger. She found herself again, not as someone's wife, not as someone's best friend, but as a woman who had survived. She focused on her career, on being the best mother she could be, on rediscovering the happiness that had nothing to do with Ethan or Lily. And one day, as she stood by the window of her new apartment, watching the sunrise paint the sky in hues of gold and pink, she realized something. She wasn't broken anymore. She was free. Trust is a fragile thing. It takes years to build, moments to break, and sometimes a lifetime to repair. Sophia had once believed that trust was the foundation of any relationship. She had given it freely, to her husband, to her best friend, never once questioning whether they deserved it. But she had learned in the most painful way possible that trust was not always rewarded with loyalty. Sometimes it was met with betrayal. Yet, through all the heartbreak, she had also learned something even more important. Betrayal doesn't just hurt the person being deceived. It ripples outward, affecting everyone caught in its wake. Margaret, a mother who had raised her son with love and discipline, was left questioning everything about him. How had she not seen the man he had become? How had she failed to instill in him the values of honor and commitment? Watching Sophia suffer had been difficult, but watching her own son become the cause of that suffering had been unbearable. She had loved Ethan unconditionally, but even a mother's love had its limits. Richard, a man who had chosen silence over confrontation, was forced to live with his guilt. He had known deep down that the truth would surface, but he had convinced himself that keeping the peace was more important than revealing the ugly reality. In the end, his silence had done nothing but prolong the inevitable. And now he was left watching his family fall apart, powerless to stop it. And then there was Lily. For years, Sophia had considered her more than a friend. She had been family. They had shared secrets, dreams, and milestones. But in the end, it was Lily who had inflicted the deepest wound. And perhaps the greatest irony of all was that despite everything, Lily did not win. She had thought she had found love, but all she had gained was a man who had already proven he could betray the woman he once vowed to cherish. Ethan and Lily's relationship did not last. Doubt poisoned every moment they shared. Ethan, once so sure of his desires, found himself questioning Lily's loyalty. And Lily, who had spent years as the trusted best friend, now realized that if Ethan could betray Sophia, he could just as easily betray her. What they had built was not love. It was a fragile illusion, doomed from the start. Sophia, on the other hand, emerged from the wreckage stronger. It took time. The pain did not disappear overnight. There were days when the loneliness felt unbearable, when the memories threatened to pull her back into the past. But each time she reminded herself of one truth. She had survived. She had walked through the fire, through the lies, through the heartbreak, and she had come out the other side. And in the end, that was the greatest lesson of all. Sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones who hurt us the deepest. But that pain does not have to define us. What defines us is how we rise after the fall.